What I'm about to show you will completely change how you see entitled people forever, because buried in the court records of a seemingly ordinary Judge Judy case from last month is a secret so shocking that it reveals the true mastermind behind America's most notorious Karen epidemic. And in exactly 47 seconds, this secret would destroy not just one Karen's life, but expose an entire network of professional lawsuit scammers who have been gaming our legal system for millions of dollars. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The Judge Judy courtroom fell dead silent as Karen Mitchell leaned into the defendant's microphone, her perfectly manicured fingers gripping the wood like claws. Her voice cut through the air like a knife dipped in entitlement. "Your Honor, you're clearly discriminating against me because I'm a successful white woman who knows her rights. This is about race and class, and everyone watching can see it." The accusation was swift, calculated, and designed to bring down America's most beloved television judge in front of 12 million viewers. But what Karen didn't know was that hidden in Judge Judy's case file was a document that would expose Karen's darkest secret and reveal the shocking truth behind her 47 previous lawsuits. Judge Judy didn't flinch. She didn't look surprised. Instead, she slowly reached for a manila folder marked confidential that had been sitting on her desk the entire time. The kind of folder that makes defendants' blood run cold. Because what Karen Mitchell didn't realize was that Judge Judy had been waiting for this exact moment for 3 years. She had receipts that would destroy Karen's entire operation. She had evidence that would shock the legal community. And she was about to reveal a conspiracy so massive that it would send shockwaves through every courtroom in America and leave Karen not just speechless, but potentially facing federal charges. This wasn't just another frivolous lawsuit about sprinkler systems and roses. This was about to become the most explosive courtroom takedown in television history, one that would expose a multi-million-dollar scam operation and show America exactly what happens when a professional legal predator finally meets someone who has done their homework. The woman sitting in that plaintiff's chair wasn't just any Karen. She was patient zero of the modern Karen epidemic, the architect of a lawsuit scheme so sophisticated that it had fooled judges, lawyers, and insurance companies across 3 states for over a decade. Before we dive into this absolutely insane story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the American justice system, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because what I'm about to reveal will shock you to your core. Seriously. The next 20 minutes contain revelations so explosive that they're already being investigated by federal prosecutors. You won't want to miss a single second of how Judge Judy exposed the most dangerous Karen in America and brought down an entire criminal enterprise with nothing but facts, preparation, and 47 seconds of pure judicial fury. Trust me, this story will change everything you thought you knew about entitled people, and the ending will leave you absolutely stunned. Now let's see how America's toughest judge took down the mastermind behind a lawsuit scam so massive that it makes your average Karen look like an amateur, and how 47 seconds of truth destroyed a criminal empire that had been hiding in plain sight for years. The stage was set for what would become the most devastating courtroom expose in American television history. Karen Mitchell, sitting confidently in the plaintiff's chair with her designer handbag and perfectly styled hair, thought she had found her biggest payday yet by targeting an elderly Latina grandmother over a simple sprinkler dispute. But she was about to learn that Judge Judy Schindlin had been tracking her criminal operation for 3 years, and this case would become the trap that would destroy everything Karen had built. The irony was absolutely suffocating. Here was Karen Mitchell, a woman who had turned lawsuit abuse into a sophisticated criminal enterprise, about to face the one judge in America who had been secretly documenting her every move. The contrast couldn't have been more perfect. The master manipulator versus the legendary detective judge, the woman who thought she had perfected the art of legal extortion versus the jurist who had seen every scam imaginable, the predator who had terrorized innocent families for over a decade versus the protector who was about to end her reign of terror forever. But here's what makes this story absolutely mind-blowing. This wasn't just a random case that ended up on Judge Judy's docket. 3 years ago, Judge Judy's production team had received over 200 complaints about the same woman filing frivolous lawsuits across Arizona, Nevada, and California. Elderly homeowners, small business owners, contractors, even children's charities had all fallen victim to Karen's sophisticated scheme. She would target vulnerable people, file lawsuits with just enough merit to avoid sanctions, then pressure them into settlements that were cheaper than fighting her in court. It was legal extortion, and she had made it into a multi-million-dollar business. The backstory gets even more sinister. Karen Mitchell wasn't working alone. Court records that Judge Judy's team had been secretly collecting revealed that Karen was part of a network of professional plaintiffs who shared strategies, target lists, and even fake witnesses across state lines. They had identified the most vulnerable demographics, elderly minorities, single mothers, small family businesses, and had systematically attacked them using the legal system as their weapon. Karen had perfected the formula. She would research her targets for months, finding the smallest possible violations or disputes, then file lawsuits demanding just enough money that settling was cheaper than fighting. What made this confrontation absolutely explosive was that it represented everything that was wrong with America's legal system being weaponized by criminal enterprises, masquerading as legitimate plaintiffs. Karen had discovered that the system was so overwhelmed and settlement-oriented that she could essentially print money by filing barely legal lawsuits against people who couldn't afford to fight back. She had turned justice into a protection racket, and Judge Judy had been building a case against her operation for 3 years. The most shocking part? Karen had specifically targeted Judge Judy's show as her next victim. She had researched the show's settlement procedures and believed she could manipulate the television format to get a quick payout while generating sympathy from viewers. She had no idea that her appearance on the show was actually an elaborate sting operation, orchestrated by Judge Judy herself. The case about Mrs. Rodriguez's sprinkler system was just the bait. The real target was Karen's entire criminal network. Mrs. Rodriguez, the 67-year-old defendant, had been living in terror for 8 months as Karen escalated her harassment campaign. Phone calls at all hours, fake complaints to city agencies, threats of massive lawsuits that would destroy her financially. Karen had done her research and knew that Mrs. Rodriguez was a perfect target, an elderly woman on a fixed income who spoke limited English and would be intimidated by legal threats. But what Karen didn't know was that Mrs. Rodriguez had contacted Judge Judy's producers after seeing similar cases on the show, and that contact had triggered the investigation that would bring down Karen's entire operation. The national implications were staggering. If Karen's network was exposed, it could reveal similar operations across the country, potentially involving thousands of fake plaintiffs and millions of dollars in fraudulent settlements. Insurance companies, courts, and legal aid organizations had been tracking these patterns for years, but Karen's group had been too sophisticated to catch. They rotated identities, used different law firms, and carefully stayed below the radar thresholds that would trigger investigations. Judge Judy's television platform was about to become the courtroom where this entire shadow legal system would finally be exposed. What viewers were about to witness wasn't just another entitled Karen getting put in her place. This was the moment when America's most beloved television judge would reveal that she had been conducting a multi-year investigation into organized lawsuit fraud, and that the woman sitting in her courtroom was about to become the key that unlocked the biggest legal scandal in decades. The confidential folder on Judge Judy's desk contained evidence that would change everything, and in just a few minutes, Karen Mitchell would discover that her perfect crime had led her into the perfect trap. To understand why this confrontation would become legendary, you need to know exactly who these two women really are, because what's about to happen represents a collision between the most dangerous legal predator in America and the one judge who had been hunting her for years. Karen Mitchell wasn't your average entitled suburban mom with too much time on her hands. At 52 years old, this former paralegal had transformed herself into the most sophisticated lawsuit scammer in the country. Born in Phoenix to middle-class parents, Karen had discovered her twisted calling after a legitimate slip-and-fall case netted her $50,000 in 2012. But instead of being grateful, she saw an opportunity. She studied legal procedures obsessively, learned exactly how much she could demand without triggering serious scrutiny, and began building what prosecutors would later call the most organized civilian legal fraud operation in American history. Karen's criminal evolution was absolutely chilling. She had systematically identified the psychological profiles of targets who would settle rather than fight: elderly immigrants, single mothers, small business owners struggling with debt, anyone who viewed the legal system as too expensive and intimidating to navigate. She would spend months researching her victims, learning their financial situations, their fears, their vulnerabilities. Then she would manufacture disputes that were just plausible enough to survive initial legal review, knowing that her targets would pay thousands to make her go away, rather than spend tens of thousands fighting her in court. What made Karen truly terrifying was her intelligence and patience. She had created detailed spreadsheets tracking her success rates with different types of cases, different demographics of targets, even different seasons when people were more likely to settle. She networked with other professional plaintiffs, sharing strategies and even trading target lists like some twisted form of criminal commerce. By 2023, Karen's operation was generating over $300,000 per year in settlement income, and she had inspired copycats across the western United States. She was patient zero of a legal epidemic that was destroying lives and overwhelming courts. Karen's fatal flaw was her arrogance. After 11 years of success, she had become convinced that she was untouchable. She believed her system was foolproof, her research was impeccable, and her ability to manipulate both legal procedures and human psychology made her invincible. She had never faced real consequences because her victims were too scared, too poor, or too isolated to fight back effectively. This confidence had made her sloppy, and when she decided to target Judge Judy's television show, she was about to discover that her perfect predatory system had one devastating weakness. Judge Judy Sheindlin, at 81 years old, represented everything that Karen's criminal career had been designed to avoid. 25 years of television experience had given her access to resources that no individual victim could match. Her staff of researchers, investigators, and legal experts had been tracking patterns of lawsuit abuse for years, and Karen's name had been flagging their system since 2021. Unlike Karen's usual targets, Judge Judy had the time, money, expertise, and platform to fight back with devastating effectiveness. But here's what made Judge Judy absolutely lethal in this situation. She wasn't just a television personality or even just an experienced judge. She was a woman who had dedicated her entire career to protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Her television show had always been about giving ordinary people access to justice they couldn't afford in traditional courts. When her team identified Karen's predatory network, it wasn't just a professional challenge. It became a personal mission. The confidential folder sitting on Judge Judy's desk contained 3 years of meticulous investigation. Financial records, witness statements, pattern analysis, everything needed to expose Karen's operation and potentially trigger federal criminal charges. Judge Judy had turned her television courtroom into a trap, and Karen Mitchell was about to discover that her perfect victim had become her perfect nemesis. The trap was set, and Karen Mitchell walked right into it, with the confidence of a predator who had no idea she was about to become prey. She strutted into Judge Judy's courtroom wearing her signature calculated victim costume, a modest but expensive blazer, perfectly applied makeup designed to look naturally distressed, and the kind of controlled desperation that had fooled dozens of judges before. But this time, she was performing for an audience of one who had been studying her act for 3 years. Karen began her presentation with the polished delivery of someone who had turned courtroom manipulation into an art form. Your Honor, I'm here today because my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, has been systematically attacking my property and my peace of mind with her sprinkler system. Her voice carried just the right tremor of victimization as she pulled out her carefully prepared evidence folder. For 8 months, she has deliberately positioned her sprinklers to oversaturate my prize-winning roses, causing root rot and destroying thousands of dollars in landscaping. Every word was calculated, every gesture rehearsed, every claim crafted to sound plausible, enough to survive scrutiny, while being outrageous enough to justify her $5,000 demand. Judge Judy listened with the poker face of someone who already knew the ending to this performance, occasionally glancing at the confidential folder that contained Karen's entire criminal history. When Karen presented her evidence, Judge Judy's eyebrows barely moved as she examined the obviously doctored photographs of healthy roses that Karen claimed were damaged, the handwritten diary entries that read like fiction, and the expert witness statement from Karen's landscaper cousin who had suddenly become a certified horticultural damage assessor for this case. But then Judge Judy began asking the questions that made Karen's carefully constructed facade start to crack. Ms. Mitchell, you say the sprinkler damage occurred over 8 months. Can you explain why you waited until now to file this lawsuit? Karen's practiced answer about trying to work it out neighborly sounded hollow when Judge Judy followed up with, and during those 8 months of trying to work it out, did you file any other lawsuits against other neighbors or local businesses? The question hit like a lightning bolt because Karen suddenly realized that somehow Judge Judy knew about her other cases. Panic flashed across Karen's eyes for just a split second before she deployed her nuclear weapon. She straightened up in her chair, her voice switching from victim to aggressor in a heartbeat that revealed her true nature. Your Honor, I can see what's happening here. You're clearly discriminating against me because I'm a successful white woman who knows her rights. This is about race and class, and everyone watching can see that you're biased against people like me who understand the legal system. The accusation hung in the courtroom air like a toxic cloud. Karen had just played the card that she believed would paralyze Judge Judy with political correctness and force a settlement. She had no idea that she had just triggered the detonation of a 3-year investigation that would destroy her entire criminal empire in exactly 47 seconds. Judge Judy's face transformed into something that Karen had never seen before in any courtroom. Not anger, not frustration, but the cold, calculated expression of a hunter who had finally cornered her prey after years of patient stalking. She reached for that confidential folder with deliberate precision, her fingers moving like a surgeon preparing for the most important operation of her career. When she spoke, her voice dropped to that legendary whisper that had terrorized guilty defendants for over 2 decades, but this time it carried the weight of 3 years of investigation and righteous fury. "Ms. Mitchell," Judge Judy began, her eyes locked onto Karen like a laser targeting system, "you just made the biggest mistake of your criminal career. Because in exactly 47 seconds I'm going to destroy not just your ridiculous lawsuit, but your entire fraudulent operation that has been terrorizing innocent families for over a decade." The words hit Karen like a physical blow. The confident smirk that had been her trademark in dozens of courtrooms began to melt as she realized that somehow, impossibly, Judge Judy knew everything. Judge Judy opened the confidential folder and pulled out the first document. "Let's start with your claim about being a successful white woman. Ms. Mitchell, you're not a successful businesswoman. You're a career criminal who has filed 47 frivolous lawsuits in the past 11 years, generating over $300,000 in extortion payments from victims who were too scared or too poor to fight back." Each number hit like a hammer blow as Judge Judy began reading from what was clearly an FBI-level investigation file. "Your prize-winning roses? There's no record of you ever entering any gardening competition, ever purchasing premium landscaping, or ever caring about horticulture until you decided to target Mrs. Rodriguez 8 months ago." Judge Judy held up Karen's doctored photographs with the contempt reserved for evidence that insulted her intelligence. "These pictures were taken at a public botanical garden in Scottsdale, not your backyard, and our investigators have the timestamp metadata that proves it." But then Judge Judy delivered the blow that would haunt Karen's nightmares forever. "As for your discrimination accusation, how dare you weaponize social justice language to cover for your crimes? You know what real discrimination looks like, Ms. Mitchell? It's what you did to Maria Santos, the single mother you sued for $2,000 over a fake slip and fall in her small restaurant. It's what you did to Robert Chen, the elderly veteran you extorted for $1,500 with a fabricated property line dispute. It's what you did to the Hernandez family when you targeted their children's birthday party business with a lawsuit so ridiculous that it made them close down rather than fight you in court." Karen's face had turned ashen white as Judge Judy revealed that she knew about cases that Karen thought were buried in different counties, different states, different legal systems. The realization was dawning on her that she wasn't facing just a television judge, but someone who had been building a federal case against her for years. Judge Judy wasn't finished. "But here's what's really going to shock you, Ms. Mitchell. This entire case was a setup. Mrs. Rodriguez didn't just randomly end up in my courtroom. She contacted our producers after your harassment campaign became so severe that she feared for her safety. My investigators have been documenting your criminal network for 3 years, and you just walked into our courtroom and confessed to your pattern of targeting vulnerable minorities on national television." The final devastation came when Judge Judy revealed the document that would end Karen's career forever. "These are copies of correspondence between you and your network of co-conspirators in Nevada and California, discussing target lists, settlement strategies, and profit-sharing arrangements. You're not just a solo scammer, Ms. Mitchell. You're the ringleader of an organized criminal enterprise that spans 3 states and involves dozens of fake plaintiffs." Judge Judy's voice rose to its legendary courtroom volume. "Your case is dismissed. Your harassment of Mrs. Rodriguez ends now. And Ms. Mitchell, I suggest you contact a criminal defense attorney immediately, because copies of this evidence are already in the hands of federal prosecutors in Arizona, Nevada, and California." The courtroom fell into absolute silence as Karen Mitchell realized that her perfect crime had led her into the perfect trap, and 47 seconds of truth had just destroyed an 11-year criminal empire. Karen Mitchell sat frozen in her chair for exactly 3 seconds before her entire world imploded. "This is impossible. You can't do this to me. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue the network. I know my rights." But her threat sounded pathetic against the weight of federal evidence that had just buried her criminal empire, live on television. Judge Judy delivered the final crushing blow with surgical precision. "Ms. Mitchell, the only thing you'll be doing is explaining to federal prosecutors why you thought targeting elderly minorities was a profitable business model. Bailiff Byrd, please escort Ms. Mitchell out before she incriminates herself further." Within minutes of the episode airing, social media exploded with a force that shattered all records. As Karen Criminal Exposed reached #1 worldwide trending in under an hour. The hashtag 47 Seconds of Justice became the most viral courtroom content in internet history, generating over 50 million views across all platforms in the first 24 hours. If you're loving this epic takedown of America's most dangerous Karen, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed because what happens next will absolutely blow your mind. Within 72 hours of this courtroom nuclear explosion, Karen Mitchell's criminal empire was completely annihilated. Federal prosecutors in Arizona, Nevada, and California simultaneously filed charges against her entire network of professional plaintiffs. Karen's real estate license was permanently revoked, her bank accounts frozen, and her luxury home seized as proceeds from criminal activity. But the most devastating blow came when 43 of her previous victims, empowered by seeing her destruction on national television, filed a massive class action lawsuit seeking over $2 million in damages. The ripple effects were extraordinary. Legal aid societies across America reported a 90% drop in similar frivolous lawsuits as other professional scammers realized their operations had been exposed. Mrs. Rodriguez became a hero to immigrant communities nationwide, proving that even the most vulnerable targets could find justice when someone with power decided to fight back. Judge Judy's 47-second takedown became required viewing in law schools as the perfect example of how preparation, patience, and principle could destroy even the most sophisticated legal predators. Karen Mitchell went from patient zero of the Karen epidemic to serving as a warning that in the age of social media and investigative television, nowhere was safe for those who prey on the innocent. If you enjoyed watching America's most dangerous Karen get exactly what she deserved, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more epic Judge Judy destructions. What did you think of that 47-second nuclear takedown? Let us know in the comments below. Share this with anyone who needs to see what happens when criminal Karens meet real justice. Hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when we drop our next courtroom annihilation video. This proves that no matter how sophisticated your scam, preparation and justice will always triumph over predators who think they're untouchable.